So you're actually watching what we're going to be ending the show with, but we're actually going to start a few hours earlier. This is Crime Watch.
Located Pedro Castro out of Arizona. His bail is current through January 2014 out of Abbasdale, Arizona. Trevor's bail 6'2", 285, black over brown. I found a possible match in California jail, which was expired and surrendered by the subject to New Jersey.
Hello and welcome to Crime Watch. I'm Jane Cameron with Sergeant Chris Nunez of the Buena Park Police Department. Now I know that as you're driving down the street, quite often you see the Buena Park Police Department and they've pulled over a vehicle. And that's what we saw as we were driving around the community. Officer Wu had stopped a vehicle. Why did you stop the vehicle?
Well, we had a vehicle violation where the driver didn't have a front plate, which is one of the vehicle violations that we had. And our partner actually made contact with the driver, and I actually made contact with the passenger, and he actually was lying about his name. At first, he mentioned his name was something to the effect of Juan Ricardo, and then after about 10 seconds after, he changed his name. So we're trying to figure out what his real identity was.
And he didn't have a driver's license or identification form with him?
No, not at that moment.
So what do you do if they won't tell you their name?
Well, we actually have the passenger write his name down, and that's kind of a proof of evidence where if he actually lies later on, we could actually charge him with either a penal code, which is 148 subsection A1, which is resisting and delaying a police officer's investigation. But we kind of talked him down, and I actually made contact with him before previously, and then I actually knew that guy. I was kind of shocked that he didn't recognize you. Maybe I gained a little bit of weight, and maybe that's why, but I recognized him, and he actually knew who I was, but I don't know why he wanted to lie. But he lied about his name, but I just told him, hey, listen, I already know who you are, and I already knew that he had scar on his chest because he had a couple of gunshot wounds before. Generally, I used to be a gang detective, and I just came out, and I made contact with the person before, and I already knew he had tattoos, but small tattoos, and that was like 8 months ago, and he came out with about 10 more tattoos that I did not see before. So I asked him, hey, would it be okay if I could take a quick photo of you? And he said, hey, as long as my face is not shown, you could take a photo of me, and I'm just gonna, turn to the side, and so make sure that, you don't get my face. I'll be okay with it. So we usually take photos just to document, that this person is still involved in the criminal street gang, and we want to make sure that we keep record of it.
Do you ever use that to maybe identify the person if they don't come out with their real name and the officer doesn't recognize them or know them?
Yes, that's a good point. We usually have records of photos as well on our booking photos, so we kind of reference that along with other information that could kind of help us identify a person that is not really forthcoming about their identity.
Is it the responsibility of someone that you stop that they are supposed to identify themselves?
Well, usually when they have some type of warrant, they kind of want to avoid contact with the police officer.
But how about just like a general sense, somebody who gets stopped for some type of going through a stop sign or something? As a driver, am I responsible for identifying myself to a police officer?
Yes, if you are a driver, you're supposed to have a driver license, some type of ID identification with you to make sure, because just in case if you get a ticket, we want to make sure we give it to the right person. And I could say, hey, my name is Chris Nunez, and if all that information goes to him, he's going to get a ticket on behalf of me. And I want to make sure that we have a photo ID that we identify who that person is. And usually we understand if, say, you go for a nice walk or a nice jog, and sometimes you don't like to carry IDs, but in a sense, it's good to have some type of identification with you, just in case of emergency.
So this person looked like he was arrested. He was taken away while the car drove away. Also, it looked like they got a ticket too. So how did this all shake out?
Well, the person got a ticket for not having a front plate, which is a vehicle violation, and the passenger wasn't really forthcoming with his name when he kind of changed his name twice. So that kind of gave us a suspicion, maybe he's not telling the truth about his name. And when I pulled up, I realized him right away because of the previous investigation that I made contact with him. So he kind of decided, yeah, that's my name and he had a warrant for it. So ultimately, he didn't want to go in jail because he had a warrant. But
Sergeant Nunez, I can see how it would be such an advantage to have officers like Officer Wu that are involved with the gang intelligence and the understanding to be out in the street too.
Yeah, that's very true. Officer Wu has advanced investigations in terms of gang investigation because he recently rotated, as he mentioned, from the Detective Bureau as a gang detective back out to patrol. So he brings all that knowledge and experience and interaction with gang members, not only local Buena Park gang members, but anybody who may be a gang member from a gang outside of Buena Park. Those people were interested in it as well. So the information that is archived, there are times we have to navigate rules and laws to collect that data. So as long as we're doing that, it is permissible to take photographs and collect other information specifically regarding a gang affiliation and gang involvement and so on. And it does take an expert in gang investigations to actually come to a conclusion or make a determination that any particular individual is involved in gang activity.
Officer Wu, it sounds like you got a wealth of information when you were working as a gang detective.
Yes, I had an opportunity to work with great partners, and they taught me. And then I also had an opportunity to work with great sergeants who give us obviously their expertise and kind of pass down their knowledge and their experience as well. So we're doing the same thing. The new detectives that we have, they're great. They're so in tune with the community as well, and they work well. And I'm really glad that our replacement have kind of stepped up and kind of shown initiative of taking care of the streets, because it's hard, because with obviously with all the gang members coming out of jail and kind of stuck here, we have a lot of issues, and we want to make sure that we provide community safety for everyone. So that's our ultimate goal.
Sergeant Nunez, to me it's always interesting to know that there are other aspects of things that law enforcement does. It's not just about catching the bad guys, but sometimes it's just about maintaining the peace.
Yeah, that's exactly what this call is all about. A lot of times there's not a specific violation of law where we can actually take a crime report or that bad guy that we need to go out and look for, the suspect that commits a crime. A lot of the work we do is just what you said, is just keeping the peace. And this particular call, it happens to revolve around a man and a woman who are going through a divorce. So you can imagine under those circumstances, there's probably a lot of ill will and frustration and who knows, why these people are going through this circumstance in their life. But one thing is for sure
31 and 36.
is, it's a very emotional time for anyone going through a situation like that.
So what are the officers doing here? Because they're not near a home. Is there something going on in the park?
No, this is not occurring at the park at all. In fact, there is a house down the street, a couple of blocks from here, that the officers will probably escort this gentleman back to. And what this is all about is he's meeting with the officers. He wants them to accompany him back to the home. I presume this is the house where he and his wife lived at together. And there's personal property there that he wanted to pick up. So, what the reason the officers meet here is that it's away from the location. They figure out if there are any restraining order criteria that comes into play. Try to figure out what the circumstances are, not necessarily the personal circumstances that lead to the separation or divorce, but circumstances in terms of how these people are relating to each other now. So the officer's role really is kind of walking that fine line between keeping the peace and just because this man called the police doesn't mean that we're here as his representative. So we work really hard to maintain that objectivity, just to make sure that there are no violations of law that are occurring, and to make sure that in a worst case scenario that no one gets physically injured.
And on that point, that's why there are 2 police officers assigned to this?
Yes, this is not a one officer call. They send a team of officers because very often family disputes and domestic disputes occur because of any variety of circumstance, and those can be very volatile in an instant. And who knows? Maybe when the officers show up at this house, the other party, in this case, the wife, the woman at this house, doesn't want him there. Really doesn't care that the police are there. It's always possible in a worst case scenario that she could exhibit, or he could exhibit, violent behavior. So, anyways, they drove around the corner. I think out of respect for their identity, I'll probably sneak down this other street and just kind of listen on the radio to see how this progresses.
It's interesting that you made that comment that the wife who's at the house, she may not care that the police are there. She may not want to change anything that she was or wasn't doing, and the police really can't do anything about that either.
Right. I mean, from a legal perspective, we really don't know who has or should have control or access over property. California is a community property state, and the laws that govern who has a right or access or control are all of that area of law falls under civil law, and our jurisdiction is very, very limited. So as I mentioned earlier, our role truly is just making sure that these people handle their personal business on their own, and we kind of maintain a posture of ensuring that it just doesn't get out of hand and anyone gets hurt.
We're out here at one of the parks, and the officers have contacted these two individuals. What's going on?
Well, the call that brought the officers to the park was 3 people smoking marijuana in the bathroom. So evidently there's no one in the bathroom right at the moment, and they happen upon these 2 individuals here, which are just a few yards from the bathroom.
So is it illegal for them to, if they had been smoking marijuana in the restrooms?
Well, honestly, that depends. It's interesting that laws pertaining to marijuana use and possession and transportation and sales and so on is really very confusing for all concerned, quite frankly. And it is possible. I don't know if in this particular case, but it is possible that these people could have a doctor's recommendation to use marijuana for some medical condition.
Does that mean they can smoke it though? Why would they smoke it in the restroom if they've got the medical reason to do so?
Well, that's an excellent question and really an obvious question. But like I said, it is possible that they could have a legitimate doctor's recommendation. And they wouldn't necessarily need to hide and go into the restroom. So really there are a lot of different aspects to this situation that really the officers just have to investigate and meet and kind of take it step by step. Identify these people, find out if marijuana is involved. Ascertain their age. All these factors really come into play when the officers are trying to make the determination whether or not smoking marijuana is legal or illegal.
Does it make a difference on the amount that they have with them, or like you said, their age?
Yes, it does. It does make a difference, and honestly, that's one of the common sense questions that we ask. And if someone legally can use marijuana for medical purposes, why wouldn't you just quote unquote take your medicine at home like most people do? And I suppose they could be away from home for extended period of time, and they need to take their medicine along with them because of that.
What if they don't have that medical note saying that they can have the marijuana?
Well, then clearly it's illegal, and they would be violating the law. So if they did happen to have marijuana in their possession, depending on how much marijuana they have, would dictate whether or not they're violating a misdemeanor or something more serious, depending on amount.
Now, with a situation like this, is this something that the officers would arrest them and take them to jail?
Well, it's possible, but possessing marijuana, less than an ounce of marijuana without a medical recommendation, for all intents and purposes, handled as an infraction. So they would get a citation, the marijuana would be seized, and they would have to appear in court, just like if you got a traffic ticket.
I would think that there are a lot of questions that the officers have to ask. You know, when you were starting to talk about the amount that they had, if they had too much, would they be looked at as possibly selling marijuana? Would that throw it into a different category?
Yes, well, that's one of the automatic suspicions. You know, not when you get a doctor's recommendation to use marijuana as medicine. You know, there's a recommendation about dosage and so on. So if they only need a small amount, you know, as prescribed, you know, on a schedule throughout the day, just like any other prescribed medication, where there are instructions about when and how much to take. You know, the doctor's recommendation for marijuana is similar. And if you're carrying around, you know, a very large quantity that exceeds what the doctor's recommendation is, that kind of doesn't make sense. You know, why would you walk around or drive around with more than what you need? So that starts raising red flags as to what people are doing with their marijuana, whether they have a you know, doctor's recommendation or not.
So the strength of the officer's actions on the situation is also dependent upon how much they have too. I would think that if they're selling it, it doesn't stay at that infraction level.
No, that's true, and in fact, selling marijuana is illegal. And even if they had a doctor's recommendation to use marijuana as medicine, that doesn't provide them the ability to sell marijuana. So they would be violating the law anyways.
Now, the officer seems to be talking to someone on the phone, so I'm sure this is evolving into many possible things because of all the questions that they've had to ask.
Right. You know, in a lot of ways, very similar to the earlier incident involving the gang member that got arrested for a warrant. I mentioned that the officers have to navigate the law. So what I mean by that is, you know, they start out with some reasonable suspicion that leads them to in investigating different aspects of this contact, and once, from a legal perspective, once the officers are able to meet that criteria, that opens the door for them to delve into other things. So it's kind of a, you know, they kind of pick at the solution gradiently, you know, one piece of the puzzle at a time, and as long as they do it in that fashion, they can continue and progress their investigation legally, and you know, if they get to their conclusion and they're not able to uncover any violation of law, then, you know, then the contact is over and people are free to go on their way.
So while they're still trying to figure out what's going on, all the questions that they're asking, if you have any questions, you can call the Buena Park Police Department at 562-3901, and we're always on the internet at bppd.com. With Sergeant Chris Nunez of the Buena Park Police Department, I'm Jane Cameron. Thanks for watching.